Picture this. The camera, once firmly anchored to the ground, now takes flight, capturing scenes from angles previously unimaginable. Since the earliest days of cinema, there have been pioneers with a relentless desire to elevate cinematography to new heights, literally. Aerial cinematography, often overshadowed by its terrestrial counterpart, has quietly become an indispensable tool in visual storytelling. From the majestic landscapes of Netflix documentaries to the heart-pounding action sequences of blockbuster films, aerial sequences transport audiences to realms unattainable by traditional means. But how did we ascend to these lofty heights? Join us on a captivating journey through the history of aerial photography. From its humble beginnings to its pivotal role in World War I reconnaissance, from the technological breakthroughs that propelled it forward to the dawn of the drone age. Photography, since its inception, has sought to capture the world from new perspectives. As Edmund McCabe noted, the history of aerial photography mirrors the history of photography itself. Without those early pioneers who had to solve the problem of how to take an image from high above the earth, while often flying a balloon or aircraft at the same time, we may never have had the invention of the digital camera. Aerial photography traces its roots back to 1858, when early pioneers utilised kites and hot air balloons to capture images from above. However, it wasn't until 1909, 6 years after the invention of the aeroplane, that the first motion picture was successfully shot from an aerial vantage point. Photographer Federico Vale achieved this feat by mounting a camera on the wing of an aircraft. While the footage lacked the sophistication of modern aerial cinematography seen in films like Top Gun, it marked a significant milestone as the first ever aerial motion picture capture. Despite its limitations, this early experiment laid the groundwork for future advancements in aerial cinematography. Progress in aerial photography remained stagnant until the outbreak of World War I. The demands of war propelled the use of aircraft and photography for reconnaissance purposes on both sides of the conflict. This period saw a rapid acceleration in innovation in aerial photography and avian technology, as military strategists recognised the invaluable intelligence-gathering potential of aerial imagery. Because of this, stabilisation and mounting options became more advanced, starting with crew members hand-holding the cameras to mounting them on the bottom of aircraft. Engineers and photographers worked tirelessly to develop more stable mounting systems for cameras, enabling them to capture clearer and more precise aerial images. These early stabilisation techniques laid the groundwork for future advancements in aerial cinematography. Additionally, the wartime necessity of gathering accurate intelligence drove advancements in aviation technology, leading to developments of faster and more agile aircraft, capable of supporting sophisticated camera equipment. In 1927, these advancements in aerial photography finally graced the big screen. With the release of Wings, directed by ex-World War I aviators John Monk and William A. Wellman, the film marked a milestone as the first drama to feature aerial sequences. Drawing on their wartime experiences, Wellman insisted on total realism, requiring that the flying scenes be shot in the air. They would strap a camera on the cowling of the engine. I had a second lieutenant with me who would get in the back seat and take off, and get us up to 400 or 500 feet. Then I would shake the control stick and he'd have to duck down and hide, because I was now the cameraman, the director, and everything. As a result, the aerial sequences in Wings represented a significant leap forward in cinematic realism. Compared to previous attempts, the aerial sequences in Wings resembled something much closer to what we would expect from today's aerial cinematography, setting a new standard for the portrayal of flight in cinema. Wings went on to win the first Academy Award for Best Picture, the only silent film to do so. Throughout the 1930s, despite the release of several major aviation films, aerial cinematography saw little innovation. Techniques and styles remained largely limited to movies featuring dogfights and aerial combat. However, the landscape of aerial cinematography underwent a transformative shift with the introduction of the helicopter. There are several movies from the late 1940s listed as the first use of a helicopter on a commercial film shoot, but it was the 1955 TV series Highway Patrol, with its flyover title sequence and frequent use of the Bell H-47 in scenes that put the helicopter squarely in the public eye. Unlike fixed-wing aircraft, helicopters offered filmmakers unprecedented manoeuvrability and versatility, opening up new possibilities for capturing dynamic aerial shots. With the ability to hover, fly at low altitudes and navigate tight spaces, helicopters revolutionised aerial cinematography, allowing filmmakers to explore new perspectives and capture breathtaking scenes previously unattainable. The introduction of helicopters marked a turning point in the history of aerial cinematography, ushering in a new era of creativity and innovation in visual storytelling. To further my research into aerial cinematography, I interviewed aerial director of photography Skip Margot about his time as a camera operator and aerial director of photography using helicopters.
There were very little stabilized applications. There were a couple of big, huge balls that would go on the front, or stuff that was adapted from the Second World War, literally, that they used to put in the side of the aircraft. And you really weren't getting very good stuff. And it was actually quite dangerous because you had operators sitting indoors, and when things went wrong, it's kind of the worst place to sit. So there were quite a few accidents in the 90s where people were sadly killed and seriously injured.
A helicopter crash near Magic Mountain today brought tragedy to the set of the Steven Spielberg movie The Twilight Zone. Actor Vic Morrow and 2 small children were killed when the chopper came down as they were shooting a war scene.
The helicopter crashed just before 2:30 in the Indian Dunes Park as a Warner Brothers crew was about to wrap up filming for a story in the new Twilight Zone movie. The scene called for a nighttime bombing of a Vietnamese village in which actor Vic Morrow was supposed to pick up 2 Vietnamese children and run across the Santa Clara riverbed. Investigators say one of the blasts may have sheared off the helicopter's tail rudder, and the huge rotor blade hit Morrow and the kids, killing them instantly.
Helicopter crashes have taken more lives on film sets than any other type of accident in modern times. Since 1980, 33 film and TV workers, nearly 1 a year, have been killed.
The incident that you talked about earlier was hugely sad, and we all learned as an industry a lot from it. And it's referred to almost every time you have a helicopter shoot.
Following on from the invention of the helicopter, the next technological breakthrough to impact aerial cinematography is the invention of the digital camera. Remember the quote at the start? The history of aerial photography mirrors the history of photography itself. Without those early pioneers who had to solve the problem of how to take an image from high above the earth, while often flying a balloon or aircraft at the same time, we may never have had the invention of the digital camera. Well, here is where that comes in. In 1957, the first digital image was created by Russell Kursk, but it's the space race of the 1960s that took the technology to new heights. NASA needed a solution for capturing images in space, and film, despite all its wonderful qualities, would not be practical for the task at hand. With the Mariner 4 set to make a flyby of Mars in 1965, NASA wanted to be able to take photos of the red planet. After all, seeing is believing. Taking inspiration from the earlier work of Charles Ginzburg, NASA outfitted the Mariner 4 with a TV camera connected to a magnetic tape recorder. This allowed for images to be transmitted back to Earth. The system had a lot of weight and moving parts that could break, so in 1990, in the pursuit of cheaper alternatives, JPL engineer Eric Fossum had a better idea: CMOS technology. The creation of CMOS sensors now meant that cameras could be smaller and easier to integrate with other technology.
So in 1990, when I was a professor at Columbia, I was recruited to the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory at the California Institute of Technology, Caltech. After I was at JPL for a couple of years, the administrator of NASA said, hey, we want to build smaller rockets. We want to have smaller instrument systems. And for me at JPL, that meant how do we build cameras that were maybe the size of a bread box or larger and shrink it down to a coffee cup size.
It's not an overstatement to say his technology changed the world. We may look at our smartphones, turn on a TV, or use a webcam for virtual meetings. A CMOS image sensor makes these devices possible in each of these instances.
That all changed around about mid-2000, around about 2005, 2006, when we started to move away from film. So the cameras got smaller. That was always one of the limiting factors, the size of the camera and the size of the housing that would need to take the camera. So when HD started to rear its head, it made the gimbal smaller. So I'm sure, as you're aware, there were some quite groundbreaking images from Planet Earth, the original Planet Earth. And the big one that really got my interest was the wild dog scene shot in Namibia, where they chased a pack of wild dogs in the Okavango Delta. And they managed to get footage that no one had ever seen before, and it exposed behavior that no one had ever seen.
Simultaneously to the introduction of the digital camera came the creation of stabilisation equipment, allowing for heavier lenses and giving aerial cinematographers more creative freedom.
2005-6, a company called Cineplex started, which they were able to use weapons-grade gyros and stabilise cameras in a way that had never been done before. But that was the biggest change when we ended up being able to use lenses we've never been able to use before, very, very long lenses, fully stabilised, and able to shoot things that you just never were able to do before. So that really got me properly invested in aerials around 2007, coming from a camera background and then a production background.
The drone age did not come suddenly, it was quietly coming together behind the scenes. Its roots actually go back to 1917. The British experimented with small radio-controlled aircraft. Then during the Vietnam War, when America used UAVs for intelligence gathering. But what really brought drones to where we are today is the previous two inventions, the CMOS sensor and stabilisation. This has enabled drones to become smaller and more affordable, allowing aerial cinematography to become accessible to even low-budget productions.
Drones progress in a way that full-size aerial cinematography can never keep up with. They're able to, the certification requirements for drones is nowhere near as stringent as manned full-size aviation. So they're able to do things that we just can't do. And I firmly believe there's a place for both parts of the industry. There are things that drones can do that we can't do full-size, and equally there are things that we can do that drones can't do. And we've gone from being very busy to doing very, very, very few aerial shoots now, just because drones are so accessible and so much more cost effective than manned.
The main impact drones have had is reducing the budget needed to have aerial shots in your film. The downside to this is the barrier to entry is now lower, as anyone can buy themselves a drone and call themselves a drone pilot. This has led to some subpar aerial work on short films and the cheaper end of Netflix documentaries. So because of this, it's important to look at what makes an aerial shot look good. What seemingly a simple thing can actually be the hardest to achieve. Roger Deakins. This quote rings true when it comes to aerial cinematography. When you have to pilot an aircraft and operate a camera, nothing is simple. For my first example of what makes aerial shots work is the 2015 film Eye in the Sky. Eye in the Sky maintains nerve-wracking suspense throughout its running time and explicates some of the unknown nuances of drone warfare. What makes Eye in the Sky so suspenseful is its use of aerial shots, how the shots directly link to the plot. The viewer is not just looking at an aerial shot because of its cool factor. The aerial sequences directly place the audience in the position of a military drone pilot. Despite the surveillance theme, the aerial shots in Eye of the Sky avoid being a tripod in the sky by incorporating movement into the perspective of the shots.
Eye in the Sky was a very interesting world because we doubled for a drone, which is unusual. It's not normally the way it works. And the reason we did, and the reason we went down that road, is legislation at the time precluded the use of drones in that environment. The area we ended up shooting, is right next to Cape Town Airport. It's the Cape Town Film Studios. And that is literally on the boundary of Cape Town International Airport, inside the boundary. So the use of drones at the time hadn't been approved. Now you can do it. There's a robust system, but at the time you couldn't do it. So we ended up being the drone. And I think it gave the director, Gavin Hood, who won an Oscar for Totsi, is a wonderful guy and a very collaborative guy. And I was involved many months before shooting and had some conversations with some Reaper pilots and was able to really dig into it and look at how they operated and how it worked from an unmanned perspective to try and bring as much into the shoot as possible, which was great. And as I said, Gavin's hugely collaborative. So we had a lot of meetings and a lot of R&D went into it to be as realistic as possible.
My next example is Michael Bay's 2022 film Ambulance. It's the first time that a film heavily based on FPV shots, or first-person view, appeared in the cinemas. To achieve this, they attached a red Komodo on an FPV drone in order to get cinema quality footage. The Komodo really looks great on a big screen, and combined with an FPV drone, it makes you dive into the heart of the action. Watching it on a big canvas dramatically elevates its immersiveness. As I said previously, movement is what makes aerial shots look great, because if you're not going to move the camera, why bother using a tool that is capable of moving at speed? The FPV shots in Ambulance are skillfully executed, with the drones flying through buildings and around real vehicles. Ambulance is an exemplar of what can be achieved with drone technology.
Bring it low, then start to go up.
Michael was getting different shots that he would usually never shoot, so it gave it a very different style.
I've done 9 movies with Michael, and one of my first jobs on every movie is what's the newest, coolest gear out there. So on this movie, it's called FPV.
3, 2, 1, and action.
Michael gives us very concise direction.
You understand what I'm saying? Because you're watching on a tight lens here. If you hold 2 more seconds on a movie screen, it needs a 100 more. Yeah.
But he gives us the ability to be creative.
My name is Alex Vanover, and I'm a drone pilot on this movie Ambulance for Michael Bay.
Best pilot we know over here.
When I'm flying the drone, I'm acting like Superman in a way, where I'm trying to get these really unique angles and shots. I fly what's called an FPV drone, and FPV stands for first person view. So we wear a set of goggles on our face, and when I'm flying the drone, I'm actually flying with a VR headset, and I'm able to see exactly what the drone sees in real time. So it's a whole new arena for flying and allows us to fly in really crazy locations and get some really awesome shots you can't really get with any other camera or drone.
Whoa, look at that. Oh,
Despite talking about technology, what makes the aerial shots in both these films look good is not the lenses or what camera they use. It's the skill of the pilot and the camera operator. Be that piloting hours or in Ambulance cases FPV skills, having a skilled pilot behind the controls is what makes the aerial sequences in these films look and feel incredible. Despite the accessibility of drones to the average filmmaker, it still takes multiple hours of flying to pick up the experience needed to pull off awesome aerial footage. This is because you have to think like an aviator and a cinematographer at the same time. Drones do not replace the work of traditional aerial shooting with a helicopter, but work side by side, complementing each other in what the other is lacking. A helicopter can work in stronger winds and in the rain, plus a longer flight time. A drone can work close to people and in tight confines of buildings and roads, as seen in Ambulance. However, the drone is just at the beginning of its journey, and there is already new tech on the horizon, such as the Red Bull FPV Formula 1 drone. And who knows, as the world wars improve aerial photography, the ongoing war in Ukraine and its extensive use of drones may bring advancements that will also benefit cinema.